The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on our live shows.
Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to This Week in Guns. This show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew Larosiere, and I'm here with my co-host, Shawn Herrin.
What's up, man?
Good to see you, brother.
It's so nice to have somebody else read that intro.
Well, if you wish hard enough, it can come true.
Man, I was wishing so hard. All right, so for those that don't know, I know you guys have all been itching for another episode of This Week in Guns, and I'm so happy that we're here to record one today. And it should be weekly from here on out. For those of you that don't know, the previous producer of This Week in Guns, Kenny Ortega, passed away a while back, and I took that time to kind of just take a break from the show and to look for the perfect guy to lead this to the next level. It is not me. I know Jake did the show. He did great at it. I did the show to continue it on and talk to Matt, and he has volunteered to kind of take this on and to really just guide the next evolution of This Week in Guns. And I'm super excited about it. I know it's going to be freaking amazing. And I'm ready to get going. So Matt, what do you really want to accomplish on the show going forward?
Well, first off, I want to say it was a huge honor. It really didn't take much convincing. I don't need Shawn to lead you guys the other way. I'm really excited to be talking to all of you, and all of you who are listening. I'm really thankful to be in the same corner as y'all. What I think we need to do is, there's all this information that comes out every week in the gun world, and it can be really hard to sort out what is really going on, what is FUD lore, and what is hyperbole. And I think between the two of us, we can make that happen.
Yeah, I think it'll be freaking great. There I am using that word again. Let me just, for the people that don't know, kind of give us your background a little bit and why this is of interest to you, this stuff.
Well, I started out as a mechanic, and I think that sometimes is more relevant to what I do than other things. But I was fixing cars in Orlando, and then I decided to go to law school. I came out. I'm actually a tax lawyer. I went to DC to work at a think tank, thinking I was going to do tax law stuff. I've always been a big gun guy, always been huge into the Second Amendment, but I was thinking, damn, guns, that's sexy. Like I'll never be able to work on that stuff. Lo and behold, they come in with a gun case in the office I'm at. They're like, does anyone want to do this? And I'm like, you're just like in the corner raising my hand. And so then instantly, oh yeah, you're the 2A guy, you're the gun guy. And I feel really blessed. I was able to work on a lot of really important cases before the Supreme Court while I was in DC. I also have worked with, gun rights organizations. I was director of legal policy for Firearms Policy Coalition. So there's, I've had a lot of huge, great opportunities, and it's really been an incredible ride, for sure.
Definitely. I do want to take a moment. We have a mutual friend, Othais, and Othais kind of set up this love connection. He gave me the best compliment I think I've ever gotten, in that he thought that you and I were two of the most pure 2A guys that he knew, and he thought we should work together. And I was like, all right, if Othais says it, I'm in.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know Othais. He does See an Arsenal on YouTube. It's probably, I think it's probably the best show on old guns, period. And this is coming from a biased source. I'm really into the types of guns he covers, but he's just a really great guy, really cares about this stuff. And yeah, he drew us together. And I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's enough background stuff. Let's get straight into the news and talk about it. Matt is going to kind of bring it from a very smart standpoint, and I'll be the one asking dumb questions.
I think we'll see how it actually shapes up. But anyway, so first up, I know that how could we not get into talking about the election? Something related to the election. It's impossible not to. It's like a virus, right? And it's infected every level of the law, including and especially guns. And so we've had some reports recently that Biden and the ATF are already conspiring. There was some articles out on AmmoLand and other places which basically reported that Biden administration had reached out to acting director of the ATF, Regina Lombardo, asking for the agency's top priorities so that they could work together in, ham-fisting new laws through the administrative branch. And so, yeah, we've heard a lot of stuff about like, oh, they're going after 3D printers, they're going after this, they're going after that. The only information we have right now is anonymous sources inside the ATF that were on the call have said that Regina Lombardo's top priorities are pistol braces and 80% receivers.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I heard that as well, and of course, that has you a little concerned. Now, am I correct? And basically, I think what I can really bring to the show is I read all the craziness online and I believe it all. So I'll bring some of those like conspiracy theories right to you, so you can put them to rest. So Lombardo is an appointee of President Obama.
I believe so. She's a career person. She's been there for a long time.
Okay.
Yep.
And then let me ask you this. What do you think that the people at the ATF, are they gun people? Do they hate guns? Do they want to take away all of our guns in general?
So I've, during my time up there and during the many workings I've had to do with the ATF, it's actually an interesting mix of, I would say it's primarily just career bureaucrats that don't really care about what their working subject is. Like the same people, it seemed like the personalities at the ATF that I've interacted with were about the same as the personalities at like Department of State, right? These are just people who want to have a nice, cushy government job. But naturally, when you give somebody a list of powers, this is the list of the things you can do, they try to stretch them out. I've also met people at ATF that were like hardcore anti-gunners, and I've actually met quite a few field agents and even people in the mid-level at ATF that are gun guys that really like guns. So, I don't know how well that answers your question. I know it's not a terribly satisfying answer. I'd love to be able to report that they're all demons, but
and that's been my experience. Like I've actually gotten to help out pulling data for them after a gun store was robbed and stuff like that. And they were all gun guys. They were all like, hey, check this one out. This one's awesome. And then they mess around for a few minutes and they get back to it. But I think that so often we demonize the people there, that it's interesting to hear that, some of the local guys, some of the agents, the IOIs, they're gun guys. They like love guns. And of course, bureaucracy is going to be a part of government no matter what it is. Going back to this story, anonymous.
Well, but let me just say that doesn't excuse if they're doing something that is extra constitutional, right? Like a lot of the IO, those guys are actually contractors. They don't even work for the government. But these people who do still swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. And I don't think we should let them off the hook just because they're nice. You know what I mean? There's a lot of crap that they do that is just blatantly unconstitutional. So I don't want the viewers out there to think that I'm like, simping for the ATF or something. That's not the case. That's certainly not the case. I'm just saying, of the people that I've met that are there, it's a pretty neutral, experience.
That makes sense. When you hear anonymous sources, like as in this story, what do you think?
I hear people I think people who like their jobs.
Yeah.
That's
job security.
Yeah. I mean, look, if it gets caught that you're illegal, we all saw what happened to Snowden, right? And of course this would be a much smaller thing, but nobody wants to be the guy who gets, who has to go live in Paraguay or whatever, because they leaked some information they weren't supposed to leak. So of course it's hard to trust an anonymous source, but to be honest, it's just kind of the way this goes. If you're the guy, suddenly you're not going to be on the calls anymore.
That makes sense. So, I mean, is this real? Like, I guess there's no way for us to really know that, but what are your thoughts on, like, do you think that they're going to go after these? And if so, why and how?
I mean, I think it's real. I think it's pretty clear that, 80% and pistol braces have been something ATF have been looking at for a while. You just have to have had your eyes open to, the gun industry news for a while to see that. As for what they're going to do, well, if you ask what they can do legally, the answer is nothing. If you ask what they're going to do, well, this all comes down to, how they interpret the law. There's some things that I don't think I can speak in strongly enough words about what these, practices are, but I'll try to temper myself and call them judicially created abortions that the ATF uses and many other administrative agencies use to interpret law that isn't vague into something entirely different, right? So if we saw an 80% thing, that would be, if we saw them coming after 80%, what that would be is, some new opinion letter at the ATF, or, some new policy guiding document, some change in interpretations, and they could even go through, notice and comment, or, if they change the rules, that covers the definition of a firearm under the Gun Control Act. So that would be them basically saying, because up to now with 80%, they've said there is a point in the manufacturing process where it becomes a gun. And it's never actually been, an 80% thing. That's a marketing term. It's just, when does it have enough features to where the ATF considers it a firearm under Gun Control Act? And actually, the law really is pretty clear about what is and is not a firearm receiver. It has to be able to accept those components that then could use propellant to discharge a projectile. And of course, we've seen there's problems with just defining normal AR lowers, like completed lowers, as firearms under the current law.
Right.
So I think this would be a total nightmare if, we've already got, not binding precedent, but we've already got cases where it's been pretty well established, pretty well proven that an AR lower is not a firearm. And that they try to say, well, this most of an AR lower is a firearm. The question with 80% isn't like, does it meet some test, right? Is it raw materials or is it a firearm? And I think that short of convincing Congress to pass, an amendment to the GCA, I don't think there's a way for ATF to legally or even rationally force 80%ers into the current definition.
If I understand correctly, we can make firearms in our garage, like out of pipes and nails and whatever we choose to do, correct?
Yeah, there's some of them on my wall here.
Yeah,
I printed that one.
Perfect. And if that's the case, like, and they go after 80%ers, like, does that affect everything?
No.
Yeah, so it's just these specific things. So they're attacking a certain portion of the market.
That's what they know about. That's what's in front of them, and so that's what they're focusing on, right? That doesn't mean to say that they won't try to go further on, right? They could try to, because the way the laws are set up now, and let me also clear something out. It's not that you are allowed to make a gun in your house.
Fair.
That's not how our law works. It's not illegal, right? You don't have to go and find the point in the law that says I can do this. It has never been regulated to make a gun for yourself without commercial intention, right? It's just totally outside the law, unless it has NFA, components. Which that's a basket for another day, right? And to be completely fair, NFA is dumb, but yeah. So it's not that. So let's just be super clear about that. Making guns with the intention of resale is really more of a tax law violation because you didn't properly, pay up and get registered with them to be producing guns. Like, that's what that really is.
Right.
So yeah, you can, and just like you're saying, is like, so if we start serializing 80%, well, do we have to serialize every spool of 3D printer filament, every shovel, right? We've seen AKs bent out of shovels. It's a stupid, slippery road to go down.
It is. You mentioned that if they're going to do this, they're going to do it with opinion letters. Is that how we refer to them?
No. So like the opinion letters, which are another total extra statutory and extra constitutional thing that they do, are kind of one way that they get to changing around stuff like this. But what stuff like this winds up happening through, with the bump stock thing, we saw a change in the rules, right? They went through notice and comment because they were doing something extreme there. They don't usually do that. Right. They just usually say, kind of like with the whole the whole pistol brace kerfuffle, which is what we should talk about next, because that's the other part of it. They're like, our previous determinations were wrong. This isn't actually a accessory. This is actually a machine gun conversion kit, or this is actually, with an 80%, it would be, this is actually a firearm. We were wrong last time. Whoopsie. We're not actually changing the rule. We're not actually even changing our interpretation. We're just saying we were wrong. And that's how they can try to shoehorn that through. The longer they've been doing something and the more consistently they've been doing something, the harder it is for them to get away with that.
Yeah, that does make sense. As you mentioned pistol braces, how does that apply here?
Right. So what that is and why that's related is because that's the other thing that they said they're going to focus on. Right. So then the question here is it designed and intended to be fired from the shoulder? So if, ATF heads are obsessed with pistol braces, what they're going to do is they're going to come forth and say that, all those things were wrong. They're going to do the same thing again. It's actually clearly intended to be a stock because this, that, and the other thing. And that's how it'll go through. I don't even expect that they would try to go through notice and comment on something like that. They're just going to say, oops, sorry, we weren't looking. They're actually stocks. And of course, then you litigate, right? Then you have to get a case by having either some company with an interest that was affected or having some person that has the item and there has a credible threat of being prosecuted for it. And there are proper ways to go through and sue without putting that person in jeopardy. So yeah, it's complicated to challenge these things. And the reason it's so complicated to challenge them, one of them is because the law clearly wasn't designed to evolve in this way. It was clearly designed to have a new law be passed by Congress, signed by the president, and go through all the constitutional protections that we have there.
Makes sense. But they get around it by doing things like this, and then it grows and becomes more ridiculous by the day, pretty much, right?
Exactly. They get around it by just ignoring the Constitution and pretending that it's an ink blot.
So if they do this, they do it internally. That gets put. How do they push that kind of change out? And how does that roll out to not just manufacturers, but to citizens?
Right. So they make an announcement, or there's a million ways they can do it. Right. We've seen, I've worked on matters where they just sent a C&D to a company, hey, we were wrong. Stop doing this. And right. They haven't even actually done anything at that point. They haven't changed any regs. They haven't had to make any initiatives. But heck, if you're the company and you've got this license that your whole livelihood depends on, are you going to say no? No, they're going to wind up just listening. And so they can wind up effectively making the change just by eliminating the product from a market by scaring the hell out of everybody. That's obviously that doesn't hold for too long, but that's one way they can do it. They can also just come out and say it on their website. They can send letters to all of the to the manufacturers and then tell the manufacturers to tell everybody that they sold their crap to, hey, this is our new thing. And they get away with this stuff because they're not final determinations. When you just make when they just say something like that, they're not, at that point, you can't even sue most of the time because they haven't actually done anything. They haven't taken your stuff. They haven't locked you in jail. They get to say, whoa, we haven't actually, made an enforcement action yet. We're just, so they can kind of test the waters that way. It's really hellish the way they can come out with stuff like this. And it's just because these administrative practices have just been allowed to grow and fester, and not even for that long. It's only been, a matter of decades. Plenty of people are alive, that were around before this kind of crap ever happened. It's just been allowed to go nuts in the past several decades.
What's your final word on this? Do you think it's going to happen? Should we start freaking out yet?
I stopped making bets. Like the last two elections made me stop making bets. Sure. I don't know, and there's no way to know, but I wouldn't freak out, right? Not to say look, I've got pistols with braces on them and stuff, and I think they're fantastic. What I think this is, though, is a great time to talk about the NFA and how stupid the short barrel rifle regulation is. So, let's back up. We're talking about all this stuff about, whether it's a pistol or an SBR or whatever. What we're not talking about is how dumb the SBR thing is to beginning.
Yes.
The only reason SBRs and SBSs are regulated under the National Firearms Act is because the act originally intended to ban all handguns. And so they were like, well, we can't have people just get around the handgun ban by chopping down rifles and shotguns. So they added those, gotchas, those catches to the thing. And then they took out the handgun ban. So we're dealing with these legacy laws that were designed to prevent an end run around something that never existed. That's what we should all be talking about. We should all be saying, hey, this is stupid. I have a constitutional right to the most concealable thing possible, right? The most concealable gun. And you're telling me that, like, no, I can't have this significantly less concealable gun because it might be a concealable rifle under the NFA. No, get out of here. That's stupid. It's a stupid law. It doesn't make any sense. If I have a right to a handgun, I have a right to a short barrel rifle. That's the way we should be talking about this openly. We shouldn't be debating about whether it's a pistol or rifle or not. We should be talking about how stupid it is to regulate short barrel rifles when we can have handguns.
Not to go off on a tangent, but like, have there been cases to remove SBS and SBRs from NFA? Or,
I mean, well, the very first NFA challenge was about short barrel shotguns, but it was way back, that was Miller. So that was before Heller. That was before we had declared a constitutional right to handguns. Right. And so I don't think anyone has brought that case the way I would say correctly, which is saying, drawing that equivalence, these were regulated as an end run around handguns. And you said that we have a right to handguns. So how come we don't have a right to the handgun equivalent? Right.
Yeah.
So that's how that's how I think that should be brought. And we'll see what happens, with the new court. That I think that could be a winning argument.
Interesting. And maybe if this continues and we do see them try to ban or reclassify 80% and pistol braces, maybe that pistol brace leads to a case where perhaps that could be argued in that to remove it completely from the NFA.
Right, because think about the way that logic works. We're arguing about, is it a handgun or is it a short barrel rifle? Well, if it's this, it's super constitutionally protected. But if it's this, it's because it's the equivalent of this, right?
Yeah.
So then they don't even have to admit that it's an SBR or not to bring up and challenge, right, the attempt to prosecute under the NFA.
Oh man, geez. That's there's so much there to unpack. Thank you for that. Do you have anything else to talk about on that one?
AK pistols are really cool.
Yes,
they should leave them alone.
Definitely leave them alone. Actually, I've got a NAC 9 that I absolutely love.
Nice. We just got Othias a Draco.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
My chopper.
The chopper.
Love it, man. What's the next story you want to talk about?
All right. Well, next up, let's talk about, so there's this class of people in the United States that are adults, but for some reason they can't be trusted with any constitutional rights. And that's because they decided to waste a bunch of money on getting a piece of paper from an institution. So the Michigan Supreme Court is going to be deciding soon whether students have the right to bear arms on college campuses.
Interesting.
So 3.5 years ago, there was a case in the lower courts in Michigan that was, questioning the constitutionality of banning carry on the campuses. And the law was upheld in that case. And so it's taken a long time for it to wind up the Michigan Supreme Court, and that's coming up soon. I think it's really, it's really easy to see the argument for regulating these on college campuses, right? Because, college campuses aren't like, a shopping mall or a movie theater, right? Where adults go voluntarily to hang out together, right? I mean, they're completely different.
Totally. Yeah. Once you get on that college course, they remove half your brain.
Yeah.
From the campus, they remove half your brain, and then you can't be trusted to make adult decisions, even if you are legally an adult.
Right. Of course. And I mean, I think that's national. I think that's totally rational. And that might be because I went to 2 different colleges, and so I got my entire brain removed.
The whole thing.
They're like, all right, tuition, open up. No, but seriously, obviously this is a bunch of crap. There's no principal distinction between a college campus and anywhere else, a shopping mall, a grocery store, any of the other places you keep your chopper on you. I think it's heinous. It's a really leprotic mark on our history that these people that we think are so in danger of being attacked, when in reality the school is actually one of the safest places you can be. But that aside, right? These people think that these adults are in such danger. So what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to take away the only effective way that you can protect yourself.
Yeah, and it's clearly not that they're students. It's just that they're on campus or whatever that they have some kind of issue with. Now, do you think this is just because most college campuses have a definite liberal leaning bias in the politics of the administrators? Or where does this come from? Like, why is it such a huge concern, do you think, in your opinion?
I think that we've got legacy laws on schools, right? And we kind of, in the United States, we treat schools generally as this like different and special thing that's like more different and more special than everything else. I think that we have like some brain infection when it comes to schools generally. I wouldn't blame, I'm often happy to blame the intelligentsia, but I don't know about that here because it's so widespread, right?
Yeah.
I went to law school in Alabama, and it was still against the university code to carry on campus. So there's clearly something that's deeply rooted, and certainly not deeply rooted in the Constitution, but deeply rooted in the way we think about school. That is to say, I think it's completely irrational. I think it's completely immoral. But in this case, they do have a pretty steep hill to climb, unfortunately, because the questions that they're asking are about scrutiny.
Yeah.
The level of review, which I think there shouldn't be anything less than strict, which means basically no government, you can't do it when it comes to an exercise of your constitutional rights. But they're asking, is it intermediate or is it strict, this or that? So there's a lot of ways for the Michigan Supreme Court to wriggle their way out of making a solid call here. So it's definitely concerning and something to watch.
Can you, and you may want to write down your answer because I'm sure I know this won't go into my head at all and it'll just go through, but can this intermediate or strict scrutiny, can you briefly just talk about like what the heck does that mean?
Okay. So right now there's 3 levels of scrutiny when it comes to determining a violation of your rights. And that's the lowest one is rational basis. And what that means is there any rational reason that you can imagine for the government to do it? Not whether the government asserted a rational reason. So like the government, if the rational basis was the form of review, the government could literally say, we're banning blue cars because of the threat of alien invasion and due to our deep-seated fear of ice cream cones. And then the judge could go, yeah, well, maybe it's because blue cars are more likely to have an accident, right? And then it would be upheld. That's rational basis. It's toothless. So intermediate, and then so let's go to the other end. Strict scrutiny is, so the question is, has the government violated a protected fundamental constitutional right? If it has, did it do it in the least restrictive way it possibly could to serve a extremely compelling government interest? So examples of stuff like that would be like, banning you from having a really crappy nuclear reactor in the middle of the city. It's like so generally, not that necessarily affects a fundamental right, but whatever. Yeah. But just like theoretically, it's like, well, we're doing this. You have a right to do that, but the threat of it is like really huge. And so the only way we could do that is to not let you do it like right here. Mm-hmm. That would probably be upheld.
Okay.
So in between those two is intermediate scrutiny. And no one actually really knows what that is. Every court, it seems, applies a different test for intermediate. And the only real guideposts are that it be somewhere in the between. So generally it's defined as something like an important government interest, so not like a compelling government interest, but an important government interest and sufficiently tailored. So, right, that's super squiggly wiggle wordy.
Yeah.
And so also, by the way, this whole like tiered review thing, law professors will try to tell you like this is the way we've always done it. It's actually only been for a few decades. This is kind of a new invention, but it came after the New Deal era where they wanted to keep all of this new crap on the books. So they invented a new way of looking at your constitutional right that allows them to do this kind of crap. Before, the questions were pretty much just, did this affect your right? Yes or no? Oh, it affected your right. Not allowed to do it. Like, that's how you're supposed to do this stuff.
Wow. And there's an order from the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, that says the party appealing the lower court's decision must address whether intermediate or strict judicial scrutiny applies in this case and whether it reflects historical or traditional firearms restrictions within a university setting.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that within a university setting?
Yeah.
That's bad. Whoops.
Oh man, that is pretty insane. So chances of this like going the way of freedom are probably reasonably slim, is my guess.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. You gave up betting, I remember.
Yeah, but it's possible. I'm not familiar with the composition of the Michigan Supreme Court, but we'll see.
Yeah. That is crazy. We actually fought some stuff like that here in Colorado. I don't know any court cases or anything like that, but I know that we can actually conceal carry with a valid permit on at schools and things like that, or at least state-owned schools.
Right.
Colleges.
Right. Yeah, because private ones, if they have an anti-gun policy, well, it's it sounds in trespass, so there's not much you can do about it.
And it's the same here, like state government, like the DMV and things like that. You can lawfully conceal carry in those places, but no federal or anything like that, just state and local.
Right. Yeah.
Next story, man.
Okay. So let's talk about something more cool and fun.
I'm ready.
So have you heard of the Ghost Gunner?
I have. I've seen a lot about it.
Right. So that's the thing made by Defense Distributed. It's basically a desktop CNC machine designed primarily to, cut out 80% AR receivers, which are apparently now under threat, but that's another thing. But the thing's pricey. It's a couple grand or over $1,000. I don't remember the exact price. There's a company now coming out with what's called the Ghost Gunner Flex. And it's an open source alternative to the Ghost Gunner 2. And so it uses all Jelly Bean off-the-shelf standard components. And the complicated parts are 3D printable by you, or they also have an option that has all the printed parts already good to go, and you just assemble and slap together. Runs off, I think, an Arduino board to control it. But the craziest thing is, the kit on this, like the do-it-yourself kit, talking like $500, something like that. So this is really exciting, right, to get desktop CNC capabilities for gun owners who want to do what they want to do.
That's fantastic. I mean, just to be able to slap an 80% in there and initiate it and come back and it's just milled for you. That's amazing. I mean, it's your equipment, it's your stuff. Like you mentioned earlier, it's not that we're allowed to do things. We can do things. We can do things. And that is pretty good. So the first one from Defense Distributed was incredibly expensive. This one much less expensive, $500 for kind of the whole thing. That's awesome. It's
really exciting. And you can look it up and check out what the actual pricing is. I just I'd actually talked to these guys, great group of guys. And it's all open source. It's no IP behind it. These guys just want to get this stuff out there. And this is what I love about the gun maker community. The people who make the 3D printable stuff, they all do it and they don't even expect a dollar, right? They just love freedom and so that's why this stuff really gets me excited. However, I will say the way these machines are set up, they're extremely limited. The tool head is actually, so like, here's your machine. The tool head actually comes in from the side. So it's hard to do traditional milling operations. Like if you're thinking of prototyping parts, your fixturing is going to be really complicated. And they use a router. So you're talking about really high speed stuff. It's not going to be able to do cutting very fast, but it does still feel like living in the future to have a little CNC machine, on your kitchen table, even if it is limited.
Totally. And it looks like it's a housing or housed around a router or.
Yeah. Yep. It's a standard router that uses either built-in speed controller or there's a speed controller board that handles that. So that's what keeps the cost down. It uses a router motor.
That's so cool. And then do you know if they've done like pistols, like, I don't know, like polymer pistols and stuff like that, or is it just AR lowers at this point, that if you're aware?
I know you do. They do 1911 80% frames. Some of the other aluminum and steel 80% frames you can do. I do know that people have had success cutting steel, doing very light cuts, very light passes. Keeping things cool is kind of hard, right? Like I was saying, these things are quite limited. But I haven't looked into whether you could do like a polymer 80 on it.
It says yeah.
Oh, it says yeah?
No, I said my guess is yes.
Oh, that would, the only concern I would have is it globbing up the cutting bit, right?
Yeah.
The melty plastic.
To go very, very slow.
Yeah.
and pretty fast. But yeah, I mean, like, and polymer 80s are even easier. You cut off a few fins and drill a couple holes, and you'll be good to go. But this is awesome. For $500, I'm in. As soon as it's ready, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I already ordered 2, so
even better.
Yeah, not both for me and my buddy. So,
what do you think this says? Just kind of like about freedom. Do you think this is a fantastic move to make this kind of freedom approachable and accessible for a bunch of people who it may not have been before?
So would this make it approachable for a bunch of people? Probably not. This is pretty intensive stuff. This is for real gun guys, right? But what it does is we've got tons of real gun guys. What it does is makes life way easier for them. Mm-hmm. I think that it's trending, right? This kind of open source behavior, this type of like, what I see here is I see people who care about freedom endeavoring to make it easier for other people to be free. So I think that spirit, the spirit of the people behind this project, and the way we're seeing that reflected in other communities is what is the real impact here. Something like this, I think it is a very limited use case and application, but it's part of a broader, thing.
Yeah. I think it's pretty interesting. I know that a bunch of people who listen to this show and other shows on the Firearms Radio Network are going to be interested in this. I just think it's handy and it's cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, I milled this one out, right, with the old fashioned. This is a M16A1 for those of you on audio only, with an old fashioned router jig, and I have a mill and everything, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it the way everyone was doing it, and it kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie. And a lot of us who, I have a box of 80% lying around. You probably do too. Yep. This is a way to just, because kind of to do an 80%, you kind of have to make a thing out of it. You and your buddy are going to sit down, get beers. This is more of a, hey, let's just crank one out. Boop. Yep. Huge quality of life improvement for me. Totally worth the price. I just hope everything works out.
Yeah, totally. I'm definitely ready. As soon as they're ready to take my money, I'm ready to give it. Next story from North Carolina.
Right on. All right. So how could it be something we talk about the tail end of 2020 without mentioning the COVID as well?
Here we go.
The BOBID. Well, I know you guys remember back in the early stages of the COVID, I love that one too. Where everybody was finding every way that they could clamp down on your gun rights for any possible reason. And the way this happened in a lot of states was they suspended anything that required fingerprintings. And in a lot of states, that's your carry permit. That happened here in Florida. That happened in North Carolina earlier. Well, now they're doing it again. From Harnett County Health Director Josh Rouse and some other individuals in North Carolina basically said they were going to be suspending all fingerprinting surfaces. And this is, so they didn't come out and like say we're no more concealed carry permits, right? We're not doing any more fingerprinting, and they require you to do your fingerprinting through them. So it's a de facto, suspension of the ability to get a firearms permit for the ability of people to protect themselves and their property. They did say that it's through the 23rd, but I don't know what's going to be different between now and the 23rd of November.
Yeah.
It's just like stupid and annoying.
Truly. Like if masks work, then why not have people come in, wear a mask and do that? This is an interesting one. I mean, does this Heller, right? Like individual right. Does this kind of fly in the face of that?
I think so. But if you ask, most moderate attorneys, they're going to say, well, Heller, you see, that actually was only about a handgun in the home. And let's be real. If the founders saw the Ghost Gunner Flex, they'd have been like, cool, and throwing their money at it. And I'm sure the founders would think it would be pretty odd if you're asking permission to carry around a gun. Sure. I totally think this kind of crap flies in I think carry permits at all fly in the face of the Second Amendment, right? It says to keep and bear. Well, if you're bearing, you're kind of holding it, and getting it around, right? So, I mean, it's absolutely a violation of rights. And here's the other thing. We were talking about scrutiny levels earlier. Mm-hmm. You got to look, the Second Amendment is a fundamental right. You got to have a reason for doing this. And if it's just that, we really prefer the fingerprints to be done here, that's not enough. Like, just let people do them themselves, or whatever. Like, put a little kiosk outside. There's a million other ways to do this aside from just telling people, sorry, no rights today, come back next week.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's what is it? Silencer shop kiosks where you can print it for NFA items and things like that. And here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, when I got my FFL, it said that I had to get fingerprinted, and I called the local police department. I called the local sheriff, and they don't do any fingerprints for any of that kind of stuff. So I ended up having to call my ATF person and ask them specifically. And they were like, we'll go down, just go down. I was like, I called them. They won't do it. They refuse to do it. They won't do it. They won't even talk to me about it. It's just not a thing that they will do. And they suggested that I drive to another city. And I don't see that as being a thing I'm going to do. And then they said, well, just anyone who's qualified, as long as it's on the right form, it doesn't really matter. So I ended up going to a local shipping place who does fingerprints on the proper card, got it done there, and came back and did it. But yeah, I mean, when they just don't do it, it makes it truly difficult.
Isn't it funny how they went in that exchange? They went from like being the most annoying possible to the right answer, which is just give us your fingerprints. Like, I mean, if it works for like NFA, for NFA items, everybody fingerprints themselves. Right? There's a lot of people, there's some FUD out there that people think that, you got to get it done by a cop or whatever, but that's, I'm not convinced about that. I don't want to get too deep down another rabbit hole, but all this fingerprint malarkey is just really bogus stuff. Just let people, the FD 258 forms are like, you get them for free from the ATF. They have to send them to you. You go on Amazon, you get your little ink pad, you're good to go. It's ridiculous that people are using fingerprints to hold people up. It is the current year, and it is extremely easy to just do it.
Right. I can imagine that like anything works. And so in North Carolina, they're stopping people from getting concealed carry permits.
Yep.
Because they don't want to fingerprint people because dun 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 COVID.
Yeah, the COVID.
Yeah. Goof.
Coof.
Yes. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Do you think any lawsuits are going to come out of this, or do you think people will just kind of do it and move on?
I think it depends if they'll stop quickly. If this is just a little short thing, it might be a flash in the pan that they get to escape on because there's not enough time, right? Because you need to have standing, which is actually, I think, a defect in their constitution because it means you get to get away with abusing people's rights if you just do it a little bit at a time. But we can talk about standing another time. But I think if they stop, they'll probably get away with it. They might get some angry letters, like from FPC sent out a lot of those. And I wrote some of them back then to North Carolina. We'll see. I hope that we can just put the pressure on them, make them feel not so intelligent about doing this. And this is, of course, just one county, so they're behaving like county governments do. Put the pressure on them, and they should chill.
They should
think.
Yeah.
They should chill.
Honestly, though, this is the one we heard about. I wonder how many more are out there that people are doing the exact same stuff, just taking away a little bit at a time.
Like smaller counties where just no one's paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks, which is why, it's important to get out there and talk about this stuff. Make sure your voice is amplified and, tweet and whatever.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tweet, Parler, whatever, MeWe, whatever it is you do these days.
WeChat. Or TikTok. What other ones are run by the Chinese government?
Face. Put your face on GIFs. You could do that.
Yeah, do that.
And get mad about it. So this next story.
Yeah. Just a little piece of like fluff, just something to laugh about. So we got a new Miss USA.
Woohoo.
Yep. She's from Mississippi.
Yeah. Mississippi.
Yeah. Beautiful girl. Like, congratulations.
Yeah.
For some reason, we're going to talk about what her opinion on guns are.
It just confounds me why we're going to, I'm ready though.
But we're going to do it. Because somebody asked her and then they wrote an article about it. Now we want to talk about it. They asked her what her opinion on guns was, and it was kind of a mixed bag. She said it's important to not ban guns because obviously people will find a way to get what they want anyway. I think it's our Second Amendment right, and I think we just need more safety surrounding that. She then, went on to say that she grew up in a hunting community, which of course, we all know the Second Amendment's famous whitetail clause. But then went on to say something interesting, that AK-47s and other guns along those lines should be left to our military. And I think she was like, it's a very specific thing, right? The AK-47,
Right.
that she's going to go to. She didn't say AKMs.
I don't have any AK-47s.
Right. Yeah, you got AKMs.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess I'm screwed. I got a Hungarian Type 3 AK-47 here, so I guess according to Miss USA, I should just hand this over to. You think if I hand this to the Army, they'd want it?
No, I don't think so. Really. So if you'd like to hand it over this way, I would be happy to take that off your hands. This is an interesting one. This one really reminds me of I support the Second Amendment, but there's a lot of those. There's so many, and she even mentions hunting. And I think in the 2A community, there's so much of this, and it's one of the reasons that I think we're so fractured as a community is because of things like this. Your dad or something is probably very in tune with Miss USA and what she says. Whereas the rest of us are like, yeah, I literally want to press a button while I'm sitting in the bathtub, and I want a lower to be done when I get out.
What I really want is I want to press a button and then have like an AMX-13 light tank outside when I get out.
That would also be amazing. I'm ready.
No, that's the real Second Amendment. Let's not make any cuts about that. But no, there's another thing, and it's just like the education thing. There's a poison in our minds. There's some poison that is making us think about and frame our fundamental right to protect ourselves and our bodies in terms of hunting and sport. And I get kind of triggered when people talk about ARs and stuff as modern sporting rifles. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not into sports. That's not what it might be. What you can use yours for whatever you want.
Exactly.
But I ain't doing sports with this one. This is mine. We need to ditch that. Hell, and that's why I don't like that. Hell, yeah, it's an assault rifle, and I have a right to it, and I want it. It's mine. That's the end of the discussion.
Well, I kind of wonder. We saw with the election, I don't know, still continuing, but during the election,
sure is.
Leading up was so incredibly ridiculous, and so what I see as even being wrong, even when you see numbers that are coming back, like clearly the polls were dead wrong. We still had over 140 million people vote, pretty much split right down the center. And I think so. When I teach medical classes, I talk about the bystander effect and kind of what that is and what that means, about how people are very unlikely to get involved the more people are standing around. And I think that we also have like this bystander effect as applies to what we will say in public as well, because we don't want people to think that, oh, he's just one of those MAGA hat wearing losers, or, deplorable, or, if he says something like this, if I say that I voted for President Trump, that everyone's just going to throw rocks at you or something like that. And I also wonder that maybe as it applies to here, that she's like, oh, I support the Second Amendment, and then knowing that people are just going to throw everything they can, bottles and cans and everything at her if she doesn't. But I don't think we need AK-47s and stuff like that. Maybe there's a little bit of that to this, or maybe she's just really a FUD.
Actually, you know what? I hadn't even thought about it that way. I think you're onto something. There is, with public figures, there's this huge pressure to be anti-gun because, all of the top celebrities are anti-gun, right? Mm-hmm. So, maybe this chick's hardcore, but she had to say something to temper herself. Who knows? Frankly, I don't care. I don't care even remotely at all. But I think it does relate to the public discourse and how non-gun people talk about this stuff, because she might be somebody that's really sitting on the fence, and that if there a cool gun person were to talk to her and make the case for the Hungarian Type 3 AK-47, she might be totally won over. So I do think it's important that we control that narrative to the extent we can by not giving all these little things away. Like that modern sporting rifle, you're giving away so much that you don't even know you're giving away. When you say, well, of course I use my AR for hunting, you're really giving away, a lot of the argument without intending to.
By trying to justify it somehow in a way that they will understand, because
or a way that makes them comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact is, like, you can be uncomfortable. Look, anyone should be uncomfortable about the thought of self-defense situations. They're horrible. We're talking about the worst day of a human being's life. But the fact is that it happens and it's real, and you have a right to an effective way of taking care of yourself when and if it happens. So, I think we just need to be able to more emotionally intelligently talk about that, and strongly make the case to say, if I'm an innocent and good person, you'd say to your friend, you know me, I'm a good person. Why should I be handicapped and not have the equipment that I chose?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm like, you don't have to choose it.
Yeah.
This is what I chose.
You can use a Remington 700, whatever. Cool.
Yeah. Whatever you want. Baseball bat.
Yeah. Baseball bat. Canned condiments.
Yeah. I don't know. This kind of stuff makes me wonder. I know like Chris Pratt has been, speaking of celebrities, he's been like pretty pro 2A. And I know recently he got super, super attacked and they were, cancel culture was going after him and he just shut up and didn't say anything kind of in response. And when you got Robert Downey Jr. coming to your defense on Twitter and things like that kind of says something. And Chris Pratt, like he's historically been pretty good and they come after him. And I wonder if maybe other celebrities, not Christopher Walken, because he goes after it pretty hard, right. But if people like her, maybe just think that by being, I like the Second Amendment, but that she'll avoid some of that criticism.
Or it could also be just a way of being milquetoast, Yeah. You just, what's the least offensive thing I could say? The Second Amendment exists, except for the bad things,
Right.
and that's like a way you could imagine, your mom or something, not your mom, but you know what I mean? The collective mom talking about the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Just like in Batman and Superman, Martha.
And my mom talked like that until I had her shoot an AK-47. And she was like, this is fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, get your mom an AK. It's the other way to do it.
Totally agree.
Change the mom conversation dynamic.
100%. My mom's totally gun, so
yeah.
I should probably get an AK, an AKM, because an AK, I'm keeping it clearly.
My mom, I recently gave her a Beretta 81 because she really liked it.
Nice.
People are probably going to crawl down my throat. Oh, 32 ACP. My mom wanted it. What are you going to do?
Here you go.
Yeah. But
that's epic, man. These are some fun stories, and holy moly, I have really, really enjoyed this.
No, likewise, man. This is fun. I'm looking forward to doing it every week and coming to see all of you out there in TV and radio land.
It's going to be awesome. Where can people find you online if they want to just get in touch?
You can find me on Twitter. It's at MATTLA at law. That's Matt Law at law. That's the same thing. My Instagram and whatever. But yeah, I'm happy to interact with any of you.
Very, very cool. And guys, we want to hear what you think of the show. And Matt's going to be guiding this and kind of taking it where it needs to go, correcting wrongs and sending out rights and all that good stuff. So you can go subscribe at firearmsradio.tv or Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all the places that fine podcasts are served. That'll do it for this episode. And Matt, any final words?
Yeah, I would just like to say again, thank you all for listening. And I'm going to be the first one to say it. I'm not perfect. If you had a problem with anything we said, I'd love to hear about it. Always looking to iterate and improve. A lot of this stuff is done conversationally. We might make mistakes. Love to hear them. For me, the goal is correcting stuff. So just be, totally open to criticism, totally open to you saying, you didn't like the way something was presented or whatever. I want to hear from you guys. That's the other thing. Oh, and last point. Yes, I am a lawyer, but nothing I'm saying is right because I'm a lawyer, right? Anything I say should be based on evidence. So I encourage you, if you're seeking out the truth, go do some Googling and look it up yourself. That's the best way to stay informed.
Yeah, 100%. A little bit of critical thinking, a little bit of research, and you'll be a real American. All right, that's awesome. We will see you guys next week. And Matt, this was a pleasure. Thank you, man.
Likewise. All right, so what'd you think?
Oh, dude, that